Well, hello there. Okay, today we are going to talk about how scientists work. Remember, I want you to take your notes with the Cornell style, so make sure that you divide your page into the three main sections for your notes, questions, and then your summary at the end. And make sure that you have your date at the top, our topic, of course, which is how scientists work, and then your EQ. How do scientists explore the natural world? Okay, we've already talked a lot about this in class. We know that science is a way of learning about the natural world. And in order to do that, we have to make observations. We have to be able to classify. We can make models, we can make inferences, and we can make predictions. And then, of course, the fun part about science is that you get to test your ideas through different types of investigation. Now, if we want to talk about observations, there are two main types. Um, when we are doing observations, we are using our senses. We might see something, smell, taste, well, not tasting, at least not in the lab, touching, um, using your senses. And then with those senses, we can either come up with a quantitative observation or a qualitative observation. Quantitative has the word quantity in it. So we're dealing with numbers, we're dealing with amounts. Where qualitative, we're dealing more with a description of something or a quality of it. So let's just look at these two things side by side. Qualitative, again, we're dealing with descriptions. Uh, Data can be observed but not measured. So when I say data, I mean things like color, texture, size, smell, taste, what it looks like, whether or not you think it's pretty. All of those would be different qualities versus quantitative, where we are dealing with number. We are collecting data that can be measured. We might take the length, the height, calculate the area, calculate the perimeter, determine volume, how fast something is going, time, temperature. Again, all of these things have numbers or quantities associated with them. So here, if we take a look at just a quick example, there we have in painting. Some qualitative data would be that there's blue, there's green, the frame is gold. It might smell old and musty if it's an old painting. We can look at the texture of the brush strokes. We can look at the picture and see whether we think it's pretty or if it's a serene picture versus quantitative. We can measure the picture and see that it might be 10 by 14. We can measure it with the frame and get dimensions. We can determine how much it weighs. We can calculate surface area. We can put a value on it. So that would be quantitative. Here's another qualitative versus quantitative description. You bought a latte. It might have a robust aroma, a frothy appearance. It might have a strong taste, come in a burgundy cup. But it also might be 12 ounces. It might have a specific temperature of 150 degrees. The cup might be 7 inches. It cost $4.95. So again, just more another comparison between qualitative and quantitative. And another example, let's say we're talking about our freshman class in high school. Some of the freshmen might be friendly or be very civic minded. Some of them might be environmentalists. They have positive school appearance, all great qualities. Quantitatively speaking, there are 672 students, 394 girls, 278 boys, 68% are on the honor roll, 150 students are in accelerated math. So again, quantitative numbers versus qualitative descriptions. Okay, now you try it. Go ahead and press pause for a second and you try. Try to determine which ones are quantitative and which ones are qualitative. Press pause. Do it. Try again. Press pause again. Just try it in your head. See what you come up with. Okay. Excuse me. Now, when we have all of these, or when we are dealing with the natural world, we have different types of research that we can do. We can do research that is descriptive, so dealing with that qualitative data, using information that we gather through the senses. Or it could be experimental, where we are dealing with quantitative data, numbers, data, measurements. Now, one issue with descriptive research is that it can be a little bit biased. It can be a little bit unreliable, because what might be beautiful to one person might not be beautiful to another, or what might smell lovely to one person might not smell good to another. And so when we're dealing with qualitative data, sometimes that that experiment or that data that we're collecting can be unreliable. Now, if we're dealing with quantitative data, then we're dealing with numbers. We're dealing with controlled variables. We're dealing with experiments that can be repeated very easily, and hopefully the same results are found. So when we are talking about scientific research, we want to move towards that quantitative type data. Okay, now how are we going to organize that data? And that takes us into classifying. And when we are classifying things, we are grouping them together in some way where they're alike. And we can classify qualitative and quantitative types of data. We can make models, and this is a fun thing to do. We can recreate something, either something that's small, we can make it larger so that we can visualize it, or something that's very large, we can take and make smaller. But models really help us study things that we can't directly observe. And so we're just making representations of something more complex, and that can always be a lot of fun. Okay, we are going to do a quantitative polling activity in class. So if you would, in your EN, go ahead and get this ready. Just on that left-hand side, you've taken your Cornell notes. We're going to be able to use this as a reflection. So on that left-hand side, I want you to write a quantitative question that you can ask 15 of your classmates. You're going to create a little data chart, and in class, we're going to collect the answers. And then we're going to see how we can graph them. So press pause, go ahead, and write a quantitative type question. So something where you're looking for a quantity, a number. It can be anything. And then, excuse me, right underneath that, I want you to write a qualitative. So more of an interview style type question that you can ask 15 of your classmates. We're going to create a rating scale and again a data chart. And we'll graph those results when we get back into class. Now, what do I mean by a rating scale? Because we're dealing with qualitative data, we're not going to be getting a number. We're going to be getting a description. So write a question where you can ask the students whether they strongly agree, somewhat agree, disagree. So some sort of rating scale. Or maybe it's a question all of the time, most of the time, some of the time, never. And that better not be about liking school unless it's all of the time. Okay, I hope you learned a little bit more about how scientists work. See you next time.